The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning, welcome to Catholic Chicago. I'm Father Greg Sakowicz, Rector of Holy Cathedral here in Chicago. And see to my left, dear friend Mark Tracy, who wears many, many hats at the Cathedral. As Mark and I go back over 50 years, but we're still talking to each other. So good morning, Mark.
Still are, a little bit, you know. Two things I wanted to mention. One, how about those Cubs?
How about those White Sox?
I know.
Now, we're taping this on Thursday, June 4th.
Mm-hmm.
The White Sox 33-29, the Cubs 32-30.
Yep.
But that can change on a dime.
But it's fun. It's fun.
Well, two evenly matched teams in Chicago right now.
But the other thing I wanted to mention was something exciting at Holy Name. People go to our website, holynamecathedral.org, press the button that says Cornerstone Campaign. We're public on our campaign, working to raise money to keep us in good stead.
And thanks to generosity during the quiet phase, our goal is to raise $12 million for the structure, endowment, and the $2 million for the Archdiocese. And right now we have pledged, as of this morning, $9 million.
Wow.
So $9 million out of the $12 million is actually, 8.4 has actually been bumped up in the last few days. So I want to thank everybody who's been so generous to the Cathedral campaign at this point, but still a long way to go, and we have a great program lined up this morning. Mm-hmm. The Silkworm, the Magician, and the Sister Tree, a tale of love and loss. This memoir is a story of survival, of the loss of a husband and sister, and survival of the heartbreak and hardship of caring for a spouse with early-onset Alzheimer's. This is also a love story between two kindred spirits who found each other despite vastly different backgrounds, and two sisters who forged a bond amongst the chaos of their childhood and relied on that bond throughout their lives, steeped in tragedy and trauma. Author Suzy McNamara, present with us in the studio, found ways to survive, and her hope is that her memoir will accompany those on their journey of grief and trauma towards their own path of survival. So with us in studio, Suzy McNamara, welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on this great show. It's really great to be here.
We go back a long ways because you were with the Archdiocese for how many years?
7.5.
7.5.
And I loved being here.
Well, they loved you here.
Oh, that's so nice.
You're a live wire.
A lot of energy.
I guess I am.
And expertise. But again, the first thing I have to ask, Suzy, and that is, you wrote this book after the loss of your husband, Bob, in May of 2024.
He was December.
Or December.
Bobby was December,
December 24, and Liz, your sister, in May of 24. Right. So two profound losses within 1 year, May and December of 2024. One is hard enough, but two, you're grieving the first, and Bob dies in December.
Right.
Then you thought, you wrote a book, but just the very title, The Silkworm, Magician, and the Sister Tree, a tale of love and loss. How did you come upon that title?
So, the Silkworm refers to, I'm very devoted to Teresa d'Avila, St. Teresa, and I'm a secular Carmelite. And Teresa has a beautiful metaphor of a silkworm. And she used the metaphor when she was, writing to her nuns to describe building a cocoon around yourself so that you can delve into your soul and become in union with God, which is such a beautiful metaphor. Mm-hmm. But I also thought it was a beautiful metaphor for caregiving, because especially with caregiving, my husband was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's 5 years before he passed away, and I was his caregiver. And when you're a caregiver and your loved one has Alzheimer's, the outside world can be pretty scary in a lot of ways. And so I found it so helpful to focus on the silkworm metaphor and to imagine myself building a cocoon around our little nest, our little condo, so that I could just focus on caring for him.
What a game changer, the onset of Alzheimer's.
Right.
Now, when Bob died in December of 24, how old was he?
He was 62. So he was probably 52 when the disease first took hold.
52.
Right. I know. I know it's such a terrible time in life because, at 52 you should be at the height of your career.
Absolutely.
Your relationships should be thriving with with your spouse, with your children, with your friends. And Bob he was the smartest and funniest person I ever knew. And most of my friends are pretty smart and funny. And that just was all stolen from me.
How did you meet?
We met in law school. I went to Loyola University, Chicago Law School. We met the first day of law school, and we really connected on, we're English nerds.
Oh, no, but Mark, look at that beautiful picture.
That's so cute. Isn't it? So that's when we were dating. I think we were 24 years old. Yeah, I'm sure I don't look a day older than 24.
No,
you haven't changed at all.
Right.
No change at all. And,
Yeah,
now,
I love
how
that
old was
picture.
Liz when she passed away?
She was 58, but just turned 59 like a couple days before she passed away.
So speak a little bit about, so your sister, it sounded like, I haven't gotten through the whole book, but I read the chapter about your sister, and that happened quickly in terms of her diagnosis. But Bob, that was an extended so you had to say goodbye to your sister quickly, and Bob you said goodbye to for a lot of years.
Right.
How did that change you?
Well, with Alzheimer's, you're saying goodbye to a little bit of them every day. So it's just this constant baseline of grief, and every day is a new occasion for grief. And my sister, when she became sick, she had a pulmonary disease that was caused either by COVID or by maybe the vaccine. Well, she was a scientist, very strongly believed in vaccines, but and so when she first became ill, she didn't even we were really, really close. We talked several times a day on the phone. She's my best friend. And she didn't want to share too much. I think she was really scared too, but she didn't want to share too much because she didn't want to burden me because I was taking care of Bob. So I was already grieving, and she was grieving Bob too because she was very close with him. And then all of a sudden the disease became very acute, and then she was in ICU for a while and died. And it was just, so incredibly difficult because I couldn't really immerse myself in grieving her, even though, she was my best friend.
Because you were grieving regarding Bob.
Well, and I had to take care of him.
Exactly.
And I didn't want to fall apart.
And yet you were working full time.
I know.
And taking care of
crazy.
Bob.
Yeah.
And smiling.
Yeah.
Talk about a little bit about your sister, but family's messy, even in grief. Maybe a little bit, that might be helpful for some of our viewers to understand there's no perfect grief.
No, and I think that we really need to give each other grace. Grief, not everybody grieves in a different way, I would say. And then in our society, I think some of the traditions that we have in our society, in our church, of course, are really helpful with grief. It's nice to have some structure, the wake and the funeral and all of that. But I think we tend to put rules on people on how they should grieve. Like, well, it's been a year, you should be doing better now. And grief is uneven.
You'll get over it one day. You never get over it. And you shouldn't get over it.
Absolutely. Okay, I've said that many, many times, is I don't want to get over my husband. I don't want to get over my sister.
Or you move on the death of a loved one.
Of course.
But they say, well, you should be over it by now. No, you should never be over loss. In fact, I always say this. When you lose a loved one, a part of you dies. And the more you love someone, the harder to say goodbye.
Exactly.
And also, a beautiful line I read years ago, grieving is a process, recovery is a decision, but grieving you must.
Right.
So you say grieving is a process, and recovery is a decision. In that recovery, it doesn't mean you forget about the loved one. I'm over it. No.
Right.
You shouldn't be over it. It's your ability to move on despite the profound loss.
And so recovery, is there a moment that you can spot in your life where you were ready? You're ready to start looking at recovery?
I've done, I'll say a couple things. With my sister, I couldn't even really face the fact that she had died. And so the third part of the title is the sister tree. And I was actually on the phone with her talking to her about the plans I'd made for Bob's funeral, because he was going to die probably within a year. And I passed by a tree that I had in a park dedicated to our father. And she said, just put me there. She's like, nobody will, you're the only one who will visit me, she was the most beloved person, in the world. And so eventually that became her tree, the sister tree. And so one thing that's really helped me in recovery is going to the tree every day. And, I eventually, after Bob died the next morning, I went and I could finally sort of hear her voice when I was at the tree. So I think that it's, if you can, to find, a place where you can go and reflect on the person, I think that that's really helpful. And now I for some reason, sadly, know so many women who have lost their sisters. And so this tree has become the sister tree, and I have stones for all the sisters of my friends, and we have the stones next to my sister's plaque, and we go there and we talk about our loved one, and we try to celebrate them and feel joy, in their memory.
Is that tree close to your home?
It is. It's in Gilson Park in Wilmette.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it really has been an amazing thing. So I think that has helped me. But I think eventually, it may have even only been a few months ago, I was able to think of all the love that, what you said, Father Greg, about the grief that you feel is equal to the love that you felt. Oh. And the love in these two relationships for me was vast. Oh. So the grief is vast. But I'm beginning to really feel all of that love within me.
There's that great line that says that grief is the price you pay for love.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Grief is the price you pay for love. And also, the other word in the title, you talk about Silkworm, the sister tree, the magician.
The magician, yeah. So the magician, that refers to the magic between two people in love. So for me, it was, my husband and myself, but also the love between my sister and I. And I use that term because with Alzheimer's, that is one of the biggest, there's many tragedies associated with Alzheimer's, but one of them is that magic, between a couple, between a husband and a wife or two people in love, it really starts, that invisible string starts to fray. And there's a big part of the grief that you feel with Alzheimer's is the fraying of that, just that magic. Like Bob and I had, we connected on, I think he wooed me by quoting Yeats, a poem by Yeats, so like Isle of Innisfree. I fell in love instantly,
I would have quoted Dick Butkus.
Yeah,
I know. Well, every couple has their own thing.
Could you explain who that is?
Exactly. But for us, it was all about, Yeats and James Joyce. We're like English literature nerds, and music, and I just, that connection, way before he was diagnosed, I felt that connection fraying. And, that is just an incredibly difficult part about having a loved one with Alzheimer's. It's not even something other people would necessarily notice, but you feel it. You feel that connection fraying.
There's one little line in that first chapter or the second chapter where you're going to call your sister, but first you had to put Bob to bed.
Right.
Which kind of struck me as the intensity of the care. Mm-hmm. You want to talk a little bit about that in terms of, people, I saw my wife with her mom with Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. But those little moments that give you a clue of the intensity of the care.
Right.
How did that work for you?
Well, to be honest, and I don't mean to sound like rose-colored glasses or whatever, but to be honest, the intensity of the care was a gift to me because it was the only way I could really show my hhusband that I loved him. And yes, it was exhausting, and at times it was terrifying. There were times.
And hard.
Yeah, and hard for sure. And also, it was hard because people in your life didn't necessarily understand. But for me, I was watching him slip away. And what I could do to show my love because we weren't communicating in the same way, that was how I communicated my love to him. And he didn't understand our relationship anymore. I do tell the story in the book, but there was a time, we were in bed, overnight sleeping, and he woke me up in the middle of the night, and he's like, Suzy, you're a single woman and you work so hard. If I could ever do anything to help you, And that kind of makes me want to cry because
Wow.
I know,
Wow.
but that sort of shows like the part of your, Alzheimer's just affects people in different ways because it's whatever part of the brain is affected.
Yeah.
And for him, it was the part of the brain that allowed you to understand relationships. And so he knew I was this person, like I was the one taking care of him, but he did not understand marriage anymore. And that was hard.
That was hard.
So that was caring
hard.
for him was the way I expressed, like I was still his wife.
So it's good for you to do that.
It was, but I don't want to like lessen the
No.
physical, exhaustion.
Exactly.
For
I think
sure.
it's always
I didn't
tough.
sleep for 5 years, so,
But it truly changed 360.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Everything.
We're not talking just a little bit.
No.
It was changed. Mark, take us to break.
Yeah, we're going to take a little break with Suzy McNamara. When you come back, we had asked possibly if you could read a section from your book that really makes sense for you or fills your heart. We'll be back in a few
that's so
minutes.
nice.
Catholic Chicago. Please stay tuned.
I am a seminarian.
The Church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
We're back at Catholic Chicago with Suzy McNamara, authoress of The Silkworm, The Magician, and the Sister Tree, A Tale of Love and Loss. We asked before the break, Suzy, could you share a section of the book that you think our viewers would inspire them, it would help them?
Sure. So I figured since we're on Catholic Chicago that I would read a portion of the book where I discuss Teresa's metaphor of the silkworm.
Go right ahead.
So cocooning brought me a tremendous amount of peace and perspective during those difficult years of caregiving. It helped me navigate the complicated and painful social situations that are a common occurrence to families when the husband and dad has Alzheimer's. It helped me focus on Bob's well-being and never worry about mine. No matter how many times people tell you to take care of yourself when you are a caregiver, sacrificing for your spouse is the reality that you need to accept to survive. I was okay because I had my husband, my kids, my sister, and my God. I think cocooning also helped me to connect more to myself. When I took away the worries and distractions of the outside world and focused inward, I learned more about who I was. When I stopped worrying about pleasing or impressing other people or meeting social norms, I developed a stronger sense of myself. That focus on family, God, and my true self made me feel strong enough to survive. Teresa brought me peace in other ways. She writes beautifully about how suffering brings you closer to God and that God will never abandon you. Witnessing the suffering of the two people I loved fervently caused me so much pain, but Teresa helped me to view their suffering as part of their journey to greater joy, taught me how to manage that pain, and helped me to look at their suffering in a way that was tolerable. I desperately needed a new emotional structure to survive, and she gave me one. This life has been so cruel to Bob and Lizzo, but the suffering in this world was not the end of their stories. The suffering in this world was preparing them for happiness in their next chapters.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Now, one thing we haven't talked about is, that was a powerful excerpt, is regarding the children. But here you're dealing with Bob.
Right.
It's not just the two of you, it's the four of you, 2 children.
4 children, so
Four-
the 6
like
of us.
6
Yeah.
of you. So how did that whole thing interact with the children watching their father slip away, or just
Right.
the dad they knew was leaving them? Share that part.
Well, that's an incredibly painful part that I think is somewhat unique to the early onset Alzheimer's experience, because, you know, typically with early onset, your children could be anywhere from teens to early 30s, mid 30s. And those are difficult times in life when children need both parents. You know, they definitely needed their strong, incredibly smart, incredibly funny father, and they were robbed of that. You know, and for them to watch him, it's confusing and terrifying to watch somebody slip away with Alzheimer's. It can be. And it was really very difficult. One thing that was beautiful was my 2 younger children both had to move home because, you know, it was difficult for them, and so they came home not at the same time, you know, one for 2 years and one for 2 years. But I watched both of them go from scared, you know, maybe a little angry, you know, definitely grieving children, sort of incapacitated with their grief, because, you know, I felt the same way. And then they both just transformed into becoming these incredible caregivers, which, you know, it was so beautiful to watch. And they were incredible with my husband. And Sean, the youngest, he's the younger one in this picture, he, I mean, just watching the way he cared for his father and he was with us at the end, so he was helping me pick Bob off the ground.
Wow.
You know, he was watching. I had to go out one night, really close to the end, for a work event, I think, and he sat with his father, you know, while I was out, and Bob was talking to me because he thought I was there for like an hour. And so I called home, you know, to ask Sean how his dad was doing, and he's like, "Oh, he's just on the couch talking to you." And I was like, how incredible that this kid, you know, is not completely destroyed by watching, you know, what is happening
Now,
with their
along those
father.
lines, for our viewers, Suzy, what were some of the symptoms you saw early Alzheimer's? Because a lot of times people catch it hindsight.
Oh, for sure.
Now
Absolutely.
he was doing this, he was doing this, he was doing this. But what were some of the early signs that you said something's not right?
Well, I think the earliest sign I noticed was that magical connection, you know, being distant, becoming more distant, you know, because we would talk all the time. And all of a sudden he was very distant. And my sister noticed it too, because, you know, she felt the same thing with him, and so did all his friends. So that was the first thing I noticed. You know, Bob lost his baby sister very tragically right around the time that his disease started. So we attributed a lot of his behavior. In fact, he
To
was
that grief.
right, and he was actually diagnosed with clinical depression because it got pretty severe. But as it turned out, that was the beginning of his disease. That's oftentimes how early onset presents, is with like a severe, and especially the kind that he had with the severe depression. So, and then it just became harder and harder to ignore the signs. I mean, it's hard, you know, when somebody's 52 through 57, you know, Alzheimer's isn't the first thing you would think
Right,
of
exactly.
course. And I'm sure that there was a lot of denial going on my part, because who would want to think that?
Oh, sure.
You know, I'm sure there was, you know, and, but then some of the symptoms became much more pronounced, like the kind of Alzheimer's he had affected the rear of his brain, so, which kind of knocks out the center of your brain that understands numbers. And so he was, you know, not able to really understand time. And I mean, he hid it really well. He was so smart. So he was able to hide a lot of the symptoms, but eventually it became, you know, pretty obvious.
Now, I have an idea here. I love your title, The Silkworm, The Magician, The Sister Tree, A Tale of Love and Loss, and I would add, and hope.
Oh, that's so nice. I love that.
And that's why you're sitting here.
That's beautiful.
Maybe a little bit of where your life is now. I mean, the message to folks that you live with it, but you move on. What does that look like?
So, first of all, you know, if you have faith, I believe like we all believe, that Bobby and Lizzo are up in heaven and they're having the time of their lives. They're, I mean,
They're with
they're
God.
good.
They're with
They're
God.
good. So having that belief gives you kind of permission, I would say, to keep living your life. I also believe that they very much are rooting for me to have joy in this life. And so, once if you're firm in that belief, which everyone who has a loved one should be, because their loved ones are rooting for them to feel joy. There's none of this. I mean, neither of them would want me to, just live in this grief and live in this unhappiness as some kind of honor to them. They would not want that. Nobody would want that for their loved ones. And so I think firmly believing that they want you to go out and enjoy life. This life is a gift, and we should enjoy it. And my sister and my husband both very much believe that. So I think, to me, that's what really kind of pushes me. It's funny, I went to Rome a few months after Bobby died, and for some reason, being there made me feel, I felt guilty. I had a really hard time walking out the door. I felt guilty leaving the place that he died. Completely irrational, of course. But I did. I pushed myself, got on that plane, got there, and then all of a sudden, I was like, I actually felt closer to him because I felt more like myself. I was lifting out of that dense fog of grief and feeling more like myself. And when I felt more like myself, I felt closer to him.
Now here's a very interesting dynamic, and that is I've dealt with many people when they lose a loved one, a spouse, a brother, a sister, a parent, that for the first year or two, they have trouble enjoying themselves because they say, if I enjoy myself,
Right.
I'm not grieving the loss of a loved one. So I can't laugh, I can't have fun, I can't go on a vacation, I can't take care of myself or do something I want to do because I'm not, quote, grieving. And that is so wrong. That is so wrong because, like you said, Bob would want you to get on with your life, joy-filled as best you can.
Absolutely.
And not wallow for the rest of your life.
Right.
Your loss.
And in
Right.
God's great mystery, he came with you on that trip.
I know, and I really felt that.
Yeah.
I did, and I felt my sister too, because the time I'd been to Rome before was with her, and we were
Wow.
little kids. But
So did you have a
Really?
double wine? One for them, one for you?
that's what
Or
they would
double.
insist on. Absolutely.
Now-
Well, for me it would be beer,
In
but
the
yes.
last minute here, that is something like to get a copy of your book entitled The Silkworm, the Magician, and the Sister Tree, A Tale of Love and Loss by Suzy McNamara. How can they purchase a copy?
Well, they can purchase it on Amazon, and it's in actually all the formats. I think paperback, hardcover, and ebook. And they could also purchase it on Barnes & Noble and barnesandnoble.com. And then if they go to my website, SuzyMcNamara.com, there are links there.
S-U-Z-Y.
S-U-Z-Y.
Yeah, keep going.
McNamara's McNamara. .com.
.com.
.com, yeah.
Now we have just a little bit of time.
That's my website. So it looks like that.
Great photo, by the way.
Oh, gosh.
But add hope to your life. What are you doing now? Let people
So
know.
now I am the director. I worked here for several years, which I loved. And now I'm the director of development at the Athenaeum Center for Thought and Culture in Lakeview, in Chicago.
And how can they connect with the Athenaeum?
So, well, they could go on our website, which is athenaeumcenter.org. And it's a wonderful place. There is so many amazing things going on there. So come visit me. I'd love to see you there.
And you were here, I think, in the Archdiocese for 7.5 years, and you were loved down here in the hard work.
That's so nice. Thank you.
And you are missed. in the
Oh,
Pastoral
my
Center.
gosh.
But I want to thank you in a very special way, Suzy McNamara, author of The Silkworm, The Magician, and The Sister Tree, A Tale of Love and Loss by Suzy McNamara. And Suzy, this was a very, very fast
I
half
loved
hour.
it.
And thanks for offering that sense of love and hope. It's all rooted in the Lord Jesus, who says, I am the resurrection and the life. I always say this, if resurrection is good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for us. And you trust that. And thank you also to Mark Teresi, co-host. Always great to be with you, Mark.
Honor to be here. Honor.
Great job of our producer, directors, choreographers, Michael May and Clint Cottrell. For listening, may God bless all of you. Blessed summer. Go White Sox. Go Cubs. Amen.